Hey everyone, it's Sam, and welcome back to the 911 Nonsense podcast. To stay in the loop, learn about upcoming guests, and join in the conversations with the Noon community, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And hey, if you like what you hear in this episode, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Your support means the world to us. On this episode of Noon, Ashlyn, a paramedic instructor and host of the Medicated and Motivated podcast, shares her journey from EMS to content creation. From navigating the challenges of mental health to advocating for patients and creating impactful content, Ashlyn is passionate about leaving a mark on EMS and inspiring others. Let's get started. Are you ready to ace your NREMT exam? Pass with Pass has everything that you need. From expert-crafted study guides to online, on-demand NREMT review courses. Created by a pair of EMS educators with over 38 years of experience, Pass with Pass has taken the stress out of studying with proven techniques that actually work. If you're an EMS educator or EMS agency leader, both discounts are available to support your student success. So stop procrastinating, start studying, and pass with Pass. Visit www.passwithpass.com and enter the discount code NOON, that's N-O-O-N, for a 20% discount. Ashlyn, I'm so excited to have you on the Noon podcast today. How are you?
I'm so excited to be here.
You need to amp up a little bit more because I think I'm a little more excited than you are today. I'm just kidding. Can I go ahead and get an introduction?
Yes, my name is Ashlyn. I have been in EMS for almost 5 years. I started in 2020. When I wrote that down on the paper, I was like, there's no way it's been 5 years. But I got my EMT license when I graduated high school. I did that dual credit program, and I did not touch a truck though until the week COVID shut down the entire nation. I was working in a lab as a phlebotomist, and then that same day that the nation shut down, the EMS department at the hospital I was working at was like, hey, we need somebody full time. We just stole your application from the lab and we saw you had an EMT license. Do you want to come over here? And I was like, absolutely. Do I think it was a good idea? I'm still trying to answer that question to this day. Um, I was the youngest at the service by like 6 or 7 years. Um, but I think you had a question actually in the questionnaire, learning normal EMS protocols as someone who has never touched a truck. And then I had to learn the COVID protocols along with everybody else. It was very overwhelming for a little baby 19-year-old, but I immediately enrolled into paramedic school within like 2 months of being in EMS. I loved it. It was like a aha moment of like, okay, this is amazing. This is like almost what I feel like I'm supposed to be doing. Um, I went through Missouri Southern State University at their paramedic program and got my license in 2021. And I've been doing ground 911 for this will be 3 years almost. And I love it every
You're
day.
such a baby.
I know, I get that everywhere. When I was traveling this week in Dallas, I was hanging out with somebody and I don't remember what they said, but I was like, oh, they made like a movie reference, and that's what everyone loves to do. They'll make a movie reference and they'll be like, oh my gosh, I'm so old. You've never heard of this. And I was like, yeah, you're correct. I'm 23. And they're like, no, you're not. I'm like, yeah, I am. I'm a little baby.
Were you allowed to drive the ambulance when you started?
Ooh, so that's a really funny question. Most services, yes. This one, no. I had to have a month of EVOC training because it was a hospital-based service. So their insurance was actually very, very, very strict on anyone under 21. But I did just an extra month. Like I wasn't allowed to drive lights and sirens for an entire month. I only drove to like non-emergent calls or I drove transfers. But anytime there was a lights and sirens call, had to sit in the passenger seat. It was crazy. It was weird. It was scary. Very, very scary too. But yeah, because of their insurance, I was not allowed.
That is crazy. Yeah,
Yep.
when the service that I was at, they didn't allow anybody under the age of 21 to drive. And then as I moved into a bigger service, they couldn't get enough help, so they did have to start hiring younger people, and they did have to get it approved through insurance to allow 18-year-olds to drive the
Yep.
ambulance, which is absolutely insane, right?
Yeah.
Like, you think about it, these people who, and you too, like somebody who's just coming into life and learning about what it's like to live and do all of these things, and you're in charge of a box that moves very fast that honks at people to get out of the way.
Well, and I think it's just because it was strictly a hospital-based service. That's why the insurance was so strict. But I think about my current service, the couple that we just hired, I mean, they're all straight out of high school, and that's becoming a trend now. Like people are joining EMS because it's becoming, I think, a more prominent career and people are finding out more about it. And I'm like, man, if there were like rules and laws of like, hey, you cannot drive this until 21, yeah, EMS would be screwed. But you're right, it is very scary. You're in charge of a very large vehicle, and learning normal driving laws sometimes at that age is
Yes.
hard for some people, apparently. And now you have to learn defensive driving and being completely aware of the road. And now you have a siren, now you have an air horn. You have to learn how to drive a top-heavy vehicle. It's very hard.
It is hard. So you said that it was a dual credit program when you were in high school. Were
Yes.
there other options for classes and you chose EMT, or was that just the only option?
No, there were several. It was one of those, like, I went to the classes in the morning and then I went to the EMT program in the afternoon. There was cosmetology, there was welding. It was JUCO that was offering it. So there was a lot of programs, but EMT, I actually wanted to go into nursing. I didn't know, like, I had no role models in EMS. I didn't know anybody. I didn't have family. I'm a first generation, even healthcare worker, but first generation first responder. And no one could show me the ropes. They're like, well, everyone goes into nursing. This is like the most common route. Why don't you do this? And then my high school counselor was like, hey, you said you wanted to go into ER. EMT might be really, really cool. And I was like, okay, that sounds fun. Absolutely loved it. But as much as EMS says, hey, we're short staffed, apply here. No, no. I applied at like four different services as soon as I got out of high school, and none of them called me back. Um, it took, let's see, I applied at this hospital in like November of 2019. I was hired on at the lab immediately. It took them until March of 2020 to hire me as an EMT.
That's crazy. That's actually crazy to hear that you had applied to so many places and nobody hired you, because it feels like, I mean, here where I'm at in New Mexico, they do hire you as soon as you're out of school.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? And now it doesn't matter what age you are, as long as you're 18 and you can drive, they don't care.
literally. Yeah. And that's kind of what our students are struggling with too is, I mean, we have upwards of 20 students in our EMT class. And I'm like, where can we get a job? We want to work. And we're like, well, I mean, you can apply at places, but like the local one, I can tell you that they're full staffed. I don't think they're going to hire anybody. So we gave them all these other options and it's crazy. They're like, oh my gosh, we need so much help. Okay, why are you hiring anybody then?
Yeah, that's
It's
all
it's
right.
it's kind of like that stupid saying that businesses use. They're like, "Oh, you need work experience." Well, how are you gonna get work experience if you don't hire me?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. Well, and you had the like wherewithal to go and work as a phlebotomist while you were at the hospital, and I think that's
that was the best job. If I could go back and do that job PRN still, I would. It was so much fun, and I can't even tell you how much it prepared me as a paramedic. Like IVs came as a breeze because of all
yes.
the experience I had as a phlebotomist.
Yeah, I'm sure they did, and that can be hard for people. I got the opportunity to go through intermediate school, which is not recognized in every state, but as an intermediate, you can start IVs. So that was
Hmm.
something I got to learn fairly early on. I was an EMT basic for 3 years before getting my EMT intermediate, and yeah, going into paramedic school after that was a lot easier.
Yeah, it definitely was. It also helped me a lot with even just talking to a patient. Like, yes, I had 6 months of truck experience before I went into medic school, but what really prepared me talking to patients was being a phlebotomist. Like, you're about to poke someone with a needle. You obviously have to build a rapport with them. And it seems very silly, like thinking about it, you're like, okay, how much does a phlebotomist actually like help you with patient care? No, it did, because a lot of people don't like being poked with needles.
No, they don't.
Who is calling 911 and requesting an IV? Like, nobody wants to be poked with a needle. So going in the labs, like everyone knows they're going to get poked, doesn't mean they like it. And you have to build that rapport with them. That helped me tremendously in paramedic school, being able to talk to people.
That's
I
awesome. And
highly recommend that job.
yeah, huge kudos, right? Because that's something that a lot of people don't realize when they're getting into like healthcare in general, right? EMS, nursing,
Yeah.
doctors, they don't realize how much patient contact you're actually having and having to, in a sense, please
Yeah.
people in order to treat them. You know what I mean?
I always tell the students the hardest part of this program is not going to be like how much studying you're doing or the skills. It's going to be learning how to tell patients what you're doing and actually build that rapport with them. Like, yeah, it's one thing to remember how to cardiovert somebody and actually perform it. It's another thing to tell that patient, hey, I'm about to shock you and it's gonna really hurt. Like,
Yeah.
you have to build that bond with them and trust with them, or they're not gonna trust you at all. It's definitely the hardest part.
Yeah, patient care can be intimidating. And then also dealing with like hard contacts, right? When you're telling a family that somebody's passed away, or even answering the patient, like you can tell they're actively dying, but now you have to comfort them also. So
Right.
finding good resources for building that knowledge base up is very important. You and I had talked about it a little bit before the show, but Alex Jobber, she's amazing in her
Oh my
classes and the
gosh,
things
she's
she teaches.
fantastic.
Yes.
Yeah. Because the one thing I really, really, really admire her for is she's like, I saw a problem. I wanted to actively fix it. Because it's a huge problem. I've experienced it twice in my paramedic career now where I had to tell a family, like, hey, we've done everything. I have orders to stop resuscitation. Your family member is now dead. Like, it's a terrible conversation because they're not only watching you actively try to save somebody, but now you're going to have to stop. And the first thing that family always says is like, "Oh my gosh, do everything you can, do everything you can." But like in your head, like, no, they're long gone. And it's such a hard conversation. And I admire Alex so much. I have taken her classes and I adore them. And a lot of courses that I'm going to now, like they reference her work and it's so admirable. Like she has made headways in first response in healthcare because of the work she's done.
Yeah, it's really impressive and really amazing work that she's doing. And I hope she does continue that. Have you seen that study that just came out not too long ago that says that after people code, like, say it's a really fresh code, right? And by fresh, I mean like somebody who is fairly healthy, not like chronically ill or been sick for a long time, but a fresher code where even upwards of 10 minutes, they're saying that they could just spontaneously have ROSC without
No,
being
I
coded.
have
Yeah,
not.
like so
Crazy.
remember way well, I don't know, you're very young. Remember way back in the day when they actually used to put strings with bells connected to grave
Yes.
sites. So just in
Yes.
case somebody woke up and they were buried alive. Like
Yeah,
that's what I feel like we're seeing a lot of.
it's like that creepy scene in a movie where somebody's walking through the cemetery and they all of a sudden just hear bells. And
Yes.
the what's the movie that's coming to my mind? The Nun. It's a very iconic scene in The Nun where she's walking through the cemetery and hearing bells.
Yeah. So like they're saying that we should stay on an active code scene for upwards of 10 to 15 minutes just to make sure this person doesn't spontaneously come back to life after
That's
efforts.
wow. I have
Yeah.
not seen that. I would love to read that. That's crazy.
I'll
But I mean,
send you the
Grey's
link.
Anatomy makes episodes about that.
Yeah,
So
Grey's Anatomy, totally. That's fantastic. So you actually have a fairly big presence on like TikTok and Instagram. What
cool.
are you doing on there?
So my goal of my TikTok page is to show just like the quote unquote behind the scenes of being an EMS provider. I basically saw that there was no EMS presence anywhere. Like I said, I had no guidance in this career. I did not have anyone telling me how to do it. I didn't have any role models until like the middle of paramedic school. And I just saw that nobody understood our career. And I mean, nobody still understands our career, no matter how many influencers are out there now. But I saw that and I was like, okay. I could do this. And I started making just random little videos about what it's like being an EMS provider. And some of my most popular videos are my vlogs, where I take you on a day in the life in my 24-hour shift. And it shocks people like what we actually do. Like, yes, we can actually sleep if we're not on calls. Or our stations are basically our homes. Like, we have beds, we have lockers, we have a full kitchen. Um, and you're kind of just hanging out with people. Like, it's a big happy family. But when we do run those calls, we run those calls and it's like game on. Like, it's it's something that I've taken a lot of pride in. I like to think there is somebody out there that was like me when I was an EMT and a baby paramedic student, having no one to look up to and watching these videos of like, this is the career. Like, this is what I have to dream about. That's what I have to look forward to. And that's why I continue to do it. And then when I started my Instagram and podcast, I wanted to just build on that. I wanted to open up the conversations in EMS that nobody really wants to talk about. All the taboo crap of like, hey, this kind of sucks in EMS, but like if you don't talk about it, nothing's ever going to get done.
This is accurate. So I'm going to kind of put you on the spot a little bit with all of your, because you do have a lot of people that follow you and a lot of viewership. And you talk about having a kitchen and being able to sleep when you're not on I almost said flights, when you're not on calls. Um, are you in a like a fire service style?
Not.
Okay. And do you
So
do
I
24s?
Yes, I do. So
Okay.
I'm on the 24/48 schedule, which is the 24 on, off for 48. I've literally done every EMS schedule. My favorite videos to make are the schedule ones because I'm like, oh, this is my bread and butter. I've done the 48/96. I've done the swing, which is the one on, one off, one on, one off, then 3 days off, which is a typical fire schedule. I'm currently on the 24/48. I've done the 12s. I've done everything. I am currently at a private service. So we're not affiliated with hospitals. We're not affiliated with the fire service. We're not county based. We are literally privately funded. But I have worked for hospital. I've worked for rural. I've worked for county based. Fire is just the one area I have not ventured into yet. But they're also
Yet.
very common in my area. Like, I'm in the middle of Kansas. I don't even know the nearest fire service, to be honest with you. It's very prominent. I know Arkansas has a lot of them, and I know like 2 hours away from me in Kansas City, KCFD is a huge fire-based service. But in my little area, I truly don't know if we have any around us.
So you're not like a two-tier, you're a single tier system. You are the 911 response for the county that you're in.
Yep,
Yeah.
we are.
Okay. So do you think that you maybe I don't want to say set a false precedence, right? Because you're sharing your experience with your facilities that you have. But I've worked in plenty of services that don't have a kitchen
Right.
and don't have beds for you to lay in, right? Like
I
the last ambulance service I was in, we could work anywhere between an 8 and a 14-hour shift. And you sat in your truck if you weren't on a call. Like the even if it was the entire shift, you sat in the truck.
like a posting, like you
Yeah,
posted.
yes, we posted. And it sometimes was not in a good spot in the city,
Yeah.
you know?
And that there's a girl, I cannot remember her name right now. I actually follow her. She does like the opposite of me. She's in a posting system and I love watching her vlogs. Um, I don't know. I feel like no, because when you see, it's kind of like what Chris and Spencer say on EMS 2020. You see one EMS system, you've seen one EMS system. Like, you have not seen all of them. I do actually get a lot of hate on some of my vlogs. It's a great little scale actually. I either get a lot of love of like, oh my gosh, you do so many amazing things. This is fantastic. Please do more of these. Or it's a stop posting these stupid videos. You are in a princess system. Like, you got to sit in a recliner. Oh my gosh. Um, I love those comments because I think everyone forgets that EMS is this game of roulette. I'm only showing you the times where I got out my phone. I'm not showing you the 5 calls that I ran back to back. I'm not showing you I had a 30-minute transport. I started this call at 1 p.m. and now it is 4 p.m. and I'm just now cleaning up my truck after that call. Like, I feel like no, but I also feel like I understand that perspective of like people are gonna watch my videos be like, oh my gosh, this is EMS. This is amazing. Look how much fun she has. And then they go to their local systems and like, this is not what Ashlyn said. Giving her a very, very strongly worded email about this. So in a way, I could see that. I really could.
I appreciate your attitude for it. Like, I really appreciate your attitude towards that, and I really appreciate your answer. That was a great answer. And you know what I say about the haters that make the comments on your posts is they're giving you business. They're
Oh,
watching
literally
your
my favorite
videos and
comment.
they're commenting.
Oh, my favorite comment ever. And I've responded to this comment I don't know how many times. It's like, oh, you sleep? What type of EMS system do you work in where you sleep? And I'm like, probably a very similar one to you. Like, people don't you don't have 911 calls that just come out the wazoo sometimes. Everyone has those days where either you run no calls or all the calls. Like I'm
Hmm.
in a station right now, so I haven't posted a lot of them this month. I'm at a station that we call it the vacation station. It's known to not have a lot of calls. But then next month, when I go back to my main station, it's going to be I'm probably going to start at 7:30 and I'm not going to start or not going to stop until 7:30. It's this beautiful game of roulette. I've said that on I don't know how many videos of mine, and I still get the comments. You sleep and you're complaining about running 8 calls. And I'm like, I ran 8 calls today. I'm probably gonna run 18 next shift. Like, you have worked in this career for how long? You should know that.
Well, you know what EMS stands for, right?
No, I
Or
don't.
it stands for earn money sleeping.
It really does. Okay. My boyfriend's a police officer, and we're not allowed to have the whose job sucks more conversation because him and I will almost like throw hands. Yes, shifts suck, but you're working tens and eights. I'm working 24s. You are not up all night. You get to sleep when you're done with your shift. So we're not allowed to have that conversation anymore.
Do you guys have a lot of cross shift so you don't see a lot of each other?
So he actually works 2 hours away from me. But yes, Austin and I love saying that we have a long distance relationship, because our schedules do not align whatsoever. He is on a like 4:10s or 5/8 schedule, and I'm on the 24/48. Plus, I work at the college part-time. So there are some days where like every single day I have something. And the 2 days or the 3 days that he's off, I may like drive up there at night and then I'll go eat dinner with him and then I'll drive home, or he'll drive down here, wait for me to be done at the college, and we'll eat dinner together. Yeah, that has been something that's very challenging. He's also in the military. So dealing with him traveling back and forth or going on missions or going to drill, yeah, it sucks. The crossover is not very nice. But something that is very nice is I truly think there's a special bond between, like, if two healthcare workers start um, dating and get married, it's the same thing with first response. Like, we both know our job sucks. This job has made us have either immense love or immense hatred for human beings. And it's something that I can openly share with him of like, hey, this was really hard, or hey, this was amazing. And he does the exact same thing for me.
Yeah, and it you have to have a good, not only a good bond, but you have to keep that good communication, right?
Yeah.
Because unfortunately, there's not a lot of, there's a few, but there's not a lot of first responders, healthcare providers that actually stick with other healthcare providers. We know that going into this job. I chose not to stay in healthcare. My wife, she was a manager at a hotel.
Yeah.
Completely different from what I
That's a
do, and it was
fantastic, that sounds
nice.
amazing.
Yeah, it is amazing. It makes it hard because sometimes if I need to, complain about something and I don't feel like she's understanding what I'm upset about, like
Yeah.
that can be difficult, but I wouldn't change it. She's what's helped get me through the last 20 years in my EMS career.
It's almost like, no, they're not going to understand it, but they remind you of the good. So, like, my mom
Yes.
is like that. My mom left healthcare, and when I say she left healthcare, she was a lab technician. Like, she was the one that was spinning vials and stuff in the
Hmm.
back. She did not see any of the drastic effects of like COVID and car wrecks and traumas and stuff. But she's kind of like that. Like she'll sit there, she'll ask me about calls, she'll ask me about my shifts and stuff, and I'm like, I'm not gonna tell you about some of this stuff. But she's also a good, like she reminds me of like, what you do is special. What you do is something that none of us could imagine. And it's kind of nice. It's very nice sometimes not having those healthcare friends because they just remind you like, hey, yeah, your job really sucks, and I'm very sorry to hear that. But the amount of good you're doing your job is amazing. And that's a very nice reminder. Sometimes us healthcare workers and first responders, we don't remind each other of that because to us, it's just our day to day. It's our normal. It's very
Yeah.
hard to sit back and be like, wow, we really did make an impact today. We don't think about that. We just think, oh, we did our job.
I think it's hard to separate from that sometimes too, though. Like, this is a job, right? This is what we do does make a difference, but when you're living it day and, day and night, it's hard to separate and even sometimes accept those from a parent or a loved one when you're like, ah, whatever, shut up. You're just telling me like I don't need a thank you. I don't
Yeah.
want to thank you. I don't need a thank you. Like, I don't need this. But it is, like you said, it is really nice to hear that and for it to be meant when it's said to us, not just a thank you for your service kind of
Yeah.
comment.
Yep. Thank you for your service. Here's your free Chick-fil-A lunch. So
Dang, you get Chick-fil-A, I get a cookie.
when we go to our local it's actually Qdoba. Qdoba is the big one in our area. They are literally so nice to us. They give us 50% off if we come in on duty.
What is
And
Qdoba? I've never even heard of that.
you don't know what Qdoba is? Okay.
No.
What do you guys have like I'm trying to think. You said Mexico, New Mexico is where you're from?
Yeah.
I don't know what would be down there. Qdoba is like Mexican Subway. So like you either make your own bowl or tacos or quesadilla and you just like go down the line and
So
they
it's
put tacos.
like Chipotle.
Yes, yes. It is
Okay.
like Chipotle's cousin.
Okay. Okay.
You don't have Qdoba? Oh, I'm so
No.
sad for you. Qdoba is like my love language.
Oh, we might get an In-N-Out in 2027.
Hey, that's something to look forward to. We have Five Guys here. So,
We have Five Guys. Do you guys have
yeah.
Whataburger?
We just got Whataburger.
Oh, dude, Whataburger is the bomb. I love
My
Whataburger.
coworkers love Whataburger's breakfast.
Oh, they have a great breakfast bowl. I'm not gonna lie. It's pretty awesome. So speaking of your mental health, do you feel like, well, do you seek services? Do you get any type of treatment for your mental health?
I just recently did something I haven't really talked about yet on social media just because I really don't know how to address it just yet. Is yeah, about am I at my month mark yet? I think I'm at my almost 2 month mark. I started seeing a therapist and um even telling my boyfriend about it, the first question he asked was, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "Yeah, yeah, I'm fine." I'm seeking it because I see things in myself that I know down the road may harm something. Like it may harm our relationship. And there's things about my mind that I don't understand. Um, I'm in a career that is notorious for making people cold-hearted and just very numb to things. And I don't want that. Like I want to always have my joy and my passion for the job. And if I do experience something that is very, very traumatic or it just bugs me a lot, like I want to have that resource. And when I tell you it came at the perfect timing, my therapist, she's absolutely amazing. She was actually in EMS and the ER for a very short period of time, which that, if that's not like God's sign of like, hey, this is the perfect timing for you, I don't know what is when I met her. But I ended up going through something very, 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 very hard, like 3 weeks into meeting her, and it has been amazing. I know that stigma about therapy, especially in EMS. I don't know why EMS, we are so stubborn. Like my mentor in paramedic school, I love them to death. They are my like, I want to be you when I grow up, but they are so stubborn when it comes to therapy. They're like,
Yeah.
yeah, I could probably do that, but I'm not going to. And I'm like, but why? Because like it makes you don't have to be broken. You don't have to be sad about anything. You don't have to be angry about anything. Nurse Gwenny talked about you go to the gym every other day and fix your body. You make your body how you want it and you are proud of that. You go to the primary care to make sure that your body is all in check. there is no primary care for your mind except for therapy. You are just doing checks all the time and making sure that your mental health is up there. It's a part of your body for a reason. Like, we would not be created with emotions and feelings and thoughts for no reason. And keeping all of those in check, especially in the career that we are, is vital. And that really opened my mind. When I started meeting Nurse Gwenny and even Mike Crunchio and all of these EMS Avenger, all of them, I was like, wow, they opened my mind to therapy is not just a I go when I need it, it's a maintenance thing.
And how do you feel about it?
I I was one of those stubborn people. I was very not open to it at all. But when I truly did start seeing things about myself that I did not understand, like I have extreme just hard times getting over things. Like I will get very hyperfixated on something. I will be very, very hard on myself. I won't understand why I feel a certain reason, and it will take me like weeks to get over it. And being somebody on social media where you are constantly being looked at, and then you see something like a comment somebody made or somebody talks about your video and stuff, like it sticks with you. And it would stick with me for weeks. And that was something that really, really bothered me. I had very little self-confidence. I still really don't have a lot, but I'm working on it, and that's the best part. Um, I think it's something that came at the perfect time, and it is something that I would stick to for sure. I literally had an appointment this morning, and it was
Yeah,
fantastic.
continue to stick with it. Do you
Yes.
feel comfortable sharing one of your worst experiences?
I don't have a lot of EMS ones. I feel very I don't talk openly about this, but I feel very fortunate. I don't have a lot of like the stereotypical trauma stuff at EMS.
You're
I
very
don't,
young.
yeah, exactly. And that's why
Yeah.
I don't talk about it. I always see those comments of like, you haven't experienced enough yet. And I was like, I've experienced stuff. But I made a TikTok a couple weeks ago that said everyone's trauma looks differently. Sometimes your traumatic call will not be a pediatric code. It will not be that burn. It will not be that car wreck. It won't be that person that just codes on you randomly. Like everyone's traumatic calls are going to look differently. So no, I have not experienced any of those things. I know my time may be coming, but a couple of the big ones that stick out to me, and I can think of one and every single time I think about it, it I haven't talked about it because it's in my mind, I'm like, that's not traumatic. But I was like, no, it kind of was traumatic. Like it stuck with me, it screwed with me for a long time. It was my very first patient that ever coded on me in front of me. I had a very crappy partner. It was in the middle of the night. Fire had actually showed up, but then they left because they had another like priority call come out. So I was like, you know what? It's fine. Ended up being a respiratory in nature, cardiac arrest. I was so new that I had a hard time recognizing that they were not violent. They were hypoxic.
Yeah.
And this guy, I kid you not, was like 6 times bigger than me and my partner. And I was like, I can either get my ass kicked right now or we can try and put him down. Well, very new, very young medic of me. Um, his body just got tired and he ended up coding. And my partner was not helpful. I called for supervisor. Supervisor shows up. He's like, what do you need? And I was like, I don't know. Like, it was a very big, this is my first time dealing with it. I don't know what went wrong. Very scatterbrain. And that call stuck with me for a very long time. But um, what I learned from it is just to notice those signs and to be humble enough to just be like, I need help. But yeah, that call does not sit well with me. It still doesn't. It was like 3 years ago.
As a paramedic and somebody who's been in EMS, we always have those. And you were going to continue to have those, right? That just happened to be that kind of a respiratory, like,
Right.
aha moment. And it really doesn't matter how old you are or how young you are. If it's something that you've never seen and you can't get those blinders off to really see the whole picture, that can be hard. And somebody who talks very openly about it is Austin Kaiser. And I don't know if you know Austin Kaiser, he hosts the podcast, The Coffee Break Hems Edition.
Yeah, I was like, that
And
sounds familiar.
yes,
Yes.
he talks about how paramedics do kill people. And we do. Like,
Yeah.
there are times when we have to make a decision, and that decision can affect that patient's outcome.
Yep.
Is it always going to be the right decision? No. Is it always going to be in the best interest of the patient? Yes. We will do our damnedest to do it. And unfortunately, sometimes that happens. And I'm not telling this to tell you, like, hey, get over it. I'm letting you know
Oh
that
yeah.
you are not alone in that experience. We have all had that experience. You will
Yeah.
have this experience more than once, unfortunately. This will happen multiple times in your career, you know?
Well, and one thing that I try to like, I've tried talking more openly about it, like hey, your traumatic call is probably not going to look like theirs. When I had my capstone student this summer, we actually went through an MCI. It was my first MCI. It was his first MCI. It was my partner's first MCI. It was a very terrible car wreck. Luckily, I say they were not hurt. Internally, they were very hurt. Almost every single person had TBIs from this wreck. When my unit was the first unit on scene, right after fire showed up, they had already triaged everybody. And my student, God bless his heart, I love him. He was walking out with me, and I literally got handed a child. And of course, anyone that just gets thrown a child, that is very traumatic. At the time, nothing externally like we could see, but when everyone gets handed an unresponsive child, it's going to be a really, really hard thing. After the call, it was a very just like kind of like Zen thing. It was like a what just happened type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And we actually ended up having a debriefing about it like 2 weeks later. And it was not a, hey, you got handed an unresponsive 5-year-old. Like, that's really hard. How are you doing after that? How do you feel about that? No, it was a logistics debriefing. Like this is the trucks that were there. These were the patients. These were the outcomes. What could we have done differently? Like this C-collar was applied kind of crappily. This is our C-collar protocol. This is what we should do different. And afterwards, it kind of hit me. It was like, this is not the debriefing I expected at all. So I ended up having that talk with my student and my partner. I was like, how do we feel? Because I can tell you, having the screaming mother in our truck was not very fun. Talking to her was very, very hard. And continuously looking at this 5-year-old that, like, nobody wants to look at a 5-year-old that's unresponsive. Like, they're supposed to be lively. They're supposed to be screaming right now that I am sticking her with an IV needle. That was hard. And to this day, like, we still talk about it openly, and it's very nice. But that traumatic call may not be like as traumatic as most people think it is. It's not their bones were sticking out or there, thank God, was no DOAs on there. But it's still something that sticks with you. And that's something I try to push is anything that sticks with you. Your body's telling you it's sticking with you for a reason.
Yeah. And the red flag that you told me when you were sharing that story is that it took them 2 weeks to do any type of debriefing. There should
Yeah,
have been a debriefing right after that call and after all patients had been transported, in all
I
honesty.
agree.
Yeah, no, that's a little nuts.
Yeah, I
And
agree.
that's one of the reasons why I ask that question on this podcast. And it's something that I talk about openly as well is when I'm asking you as a provider to another provider, I know that you are 90% going to give me an honest answer.
Mhm.
Where if you're out in the streets, you know, and some random person comes up and talks to you and asks you, hey, what's the worst thing you're going to talk about? You're going to do one
It's
of
a
two
least
things.
favorite question. Yes.
Yeah,
Mhm.
you're usually gonna do one of two things. You're either gonna lie about it and you're gonna give them some phony baloney story, or you're going to share one of the worst things that you've ever seen with, and you're gonna traumatize not only yourself again, but also
Yeah.
that person who's asking you that question. So I feel like in offering a safe space
Yeah.
for us to communicate about it, we can share that with the lay people who listen to the podcast, but we can also share it amongst other providers. And you hit the nail on the head there when you said my traumatic call is not necessarily going to be somebody else's traumatic call. That's why I want to know. I don't want to know the goriest, ugliest, nastiest thing you've ever seen, unless that is your most traumatic call, you know, and for some people it
Yeah.
is. But for some people, it might be a completely different story and maybe even something not EMS related. Like, we don't
Yeah.
know what traumas you're dealing with. We don't know what you're living through right now. You know, we can only speculate by looking at what you're posting on social media, you know, or
Literally. Yeah.
yeah, how you're talking to people. And that's like one of the biggest things about this podcast is sharing.
Well, and it also humanizes people. Like
Yes.
that's why when I was listening to interviews, yours is very similar to the Found Down podcast. Um, I had just like met EMS 2020, Chris and Spencer, when they did their interview with Found Down, and I bawled my eyes out throughout that entire episode where she interviewed Spencer. Bawling profusely because I knew him as like this goofy paramedic that I had done their episode. And then I went over to the Found Down podcast and he's telling like his life story and how this career sucks. Like I've dealt with a lot of nasty stuff. I'm profusely bawling. And it made me look at them through much colored lenses. Like they're humans. And that is another thing I'm trying to push is you can't look at us like superheroes. Yes, we do these really cool things, but I am a human just like you. When you said we are going to kill people, like providers are not going to save everybody. We're not these like cool little reaper chasers and everything. That's because a human is taking care of another human.
Yeah.
Like we're not perfect. We're going to miss things. I'm going to miss the hypoxic craze for a violent patient, or I'm gonna forget that stupid blood sugar on a car accident call and can't figure out why this dude is altered. Like we're human. We're going to be making mistakes and missing things. That's just the beauty of healthcare, though.
Yeah, we are in the art of practicing medicine because nobody has perfected this career.
Yeah. Even doctors miss things all the
Yep. All the I would venture to say that doctors
time.
miss more than paramedics do, but that's just me.
Oh, I could tell you so many stories. I just did like 2 episodes ago a patient story time. To this day, one of my most proud calls. It was one of my very first calls as a new paramedic. I had brought in what I thought was the thunderclap headache, where it was a aneurysm that was rupturing, like classic telltale signs of a aneurysm. And we get to the ER and they're like, "Oh, nope, go to triage." And I was like, no, but I literally been a paramedic like a month. And I didn't know this hospital very well, but this hospital is notorious for being quite snappy to EMS. And I look at the doctor and I was like, there is something wrong. I know there's something wrong. But all they saw was like the outside details of like, hey, you came from a party. There was probably alcohol present. She probably ate something bad. And I was like, no, 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 no. You need to look past those things. You need to look at this patient from new colored lenses because you are missing that she has a freaking hemorrhagic stroke going on right now. And then she did. So,
Yeah, tell me that didn't feel good. You're like,
oh, yeah,
this sucks for this patient, but I advocated to an extent where they actually did something and treatment had occurred. Um, yeah, that I have a very similar doctor story where we took in a patient who had seized. We suspect that the patient's boyfriend had abused the crap out of her essentially, and
oh,
she went from verbal ANO times three, almost postictal, got her to the trauma center. She wanted to go to a level 3 hospital, and I told her no, let's go to trauma. So we made that decision for her, took her to trauma. Walked in, and the doctor was like, you don't need to be back here. You don't need to be in the trauma section. You need to go find a bed. And I said, well, she's bleeding from her ear. Like, this is why we brought her. Here's what's going on. And he was like, no, she's good to go to a bed. So we walk, I get so frustrated at this story. So we walk over to the like triage area where the triage nurse decides what bed the patient's going to. And the triage, it happened to be a medic that day, was like, hey, Sam, like, we don't have any beds available.
yep,
Run her up to triage. And I was like, you know what? I can take her up to the sub triage area. I can let the doctor up there know what's going on. We'll work on getting her a CT scan right away because that's what she needs.
right.
So this whole like time frame is like maybe a minute, 2 minutes. So we walk her to sub, like she's on the stretcher. We didn't make her get up and walk. We take her on the stretcher to the sub triage area, and she has a mentation change. So I was like, nope,
Oh,
screw that. Put her seatbelts back on. We're going back over to trauma.
yes.
So I walk in, and the doctor loses his shit. Like he is yelling at me from the door. He's 20 feet away. Just
Mm.
because there's no beds doesn't mean she needs to be back here. And I said, no, you need to stop. there's a mentation change. She needs to be back here. Like, I'm not arguing with her. I'm going to go ahead and go put her in that bed and you can figure it out. And
Yeah.
the nurse was even trying to tell the doctor, like, hey, chill out. She's saying that there was a change.
Yeah.
So we literally move her over to the bed and she has a massive seizure. Massive
Oh,
seizure. So
that's
she
almost like
basically,
a ha.
yeah, yes, it was. And I was like, in your face, mother
Yeah.
effer, you know what I mean? So
It's taking you 2 seconds to just say, hey, go to the CT scanner. Like,
yeah, they took her to
whatever.
CT and she had one of the biggest bleeds I've seen.
Yeah. That
Yeah.
happened to us a couple weeks ago. We got called to an urgent care for shortness of breath. And I can't stand this urgent care. I will never ever like this urgent care. But we just ended up being closer to the call. And I was actually with my student. He's now paramedic and he was my partner. When you like walked in, you're like, this is not just like nasal congestion. This is not a cold. This is not the stupid flu that's going around because of the weather change. Like this lady was the classic 1 to 2 word dyspnea. Her oxygen is 100%. And she said this has been going on for like a week. Recent surgical procedure, like 2 weeks ago. And I was like,
Mm,
this is screaming PE. Like
mm,
everything about this lady is screaming PE. She is sitting here, she's short of breath, just standing her up to pivot her. She gets like, hold on, I need to take a rest. And I'm like, this is PE. So my partner took it. We drive to the hospital and they say go to triage. And I was like, great. It's also the same hospital that told me to go to triage with my hemorrhagic stroke. So I was like, this is not going to go well. So we walked to triage and I'm standing there with my partner and he's like trying to be like, hey, she's like really short of breath. Like, yes, this has been going on for a week, but like, you can't even talk to her. She's
yeah.
saying yes and no with her head because she can't talk. Well, then there was a drastic change. They tried to stand her up to put on the scale, and she's like jello legs, like she can't even stand up anymore. And she had lungs full of PEs,
Oh
like just
no.
everywhere. And I was like, ha. We got a text that night from a tech that we know, and they're like, she's in the ICU. We're like, oh, that's fantastic. How long was she sitting in triage though?
Yeah.
So
Well, at least she made it that far. Poor
yeah.
baby.
Oh,
Uh,
it's I hate when we have to fight that hard. It's like I always tell people that paramedics are like the most notorious for, yes, I'm talking to you, but I'm also like looking around me. Like I'm taking in every single surrounding and every single detail. Like we have such a knack for seeing details. And yes, there's the classic everyone hears about thunderclaps in their books. Everyone hears about PEs and the signs to look for. But when they're actually sitting in front of you, some people just completely ignore them. But I feel like paramedics and EMTs are those people that are like, oh, no, 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 this is this. Like, I read about this. These are the signs. I have made the connection. They're like the best Sherlock Holmes people. And sometimes because nurses, and I don't mean to hate on nurses and doctors and all them, but they don't see the process that it took us to get here.
yeah.
Like we saw them change. We've seen them struggle. Just please trust us.
I will agree and disagree because I have known quite a few paramedics that
Oh gosh.
cannot make that connection. Like you were
Oh my
saying,
God.
like here's the
Yes.
book, here's the patient. They cannot make that connection. You know what I mean?
Or
But
they
then
blow
they're
it off and they're like, no, this is a BLS call.
yes.
Yes, I agree with that.
Yeah, and there's a lot of smart nurses that should have been in EMS.
Yes.
But I guess it's good that they're in the ER because they're advocating for the patients on
Yeah,
that side.
they
So,
are. And there are some amazing nurses. Like when we got to triage, the nurse was actually super, super kind. She's like, um, why are you here? And I was like, I don't know, but can you change it, please?
that's awesome. So, in your amount of time that you've been in EMS, like what has been your proudest moment?
Oh my gosh, I love telling this story. The Torsades STEMI.
Oh goodness.
Yeah, it's like my proudest ECG strip. I have it signed and everything.
Oh my God.
Love it. It was um it was actually almost about 2 years ago because it was right around Christmas time. We got called to a dentist office of all places, and it was actually the dentist patient's father. He was sitting in the waiting room and literally just falls to the floor, rolling in pain. And when I say rolling, I mean it was like that. Come on, dude. Like, really? We're a grown man. We're rolling around on the floor and we're in pain. It was almost like a come on. Like, seriously? So we get him on the stretcher. We get him in the truck. He will not sit still. It was almost like the you always hear about people that have aneurysms that are rupturing and they're like, they just
Hmm.
can't get comfortable, like they're rolling around and stuff. That's how this guy was. And I was like, oh my gosh, okay. This dude, like, he wasn't pale, cold, diaphoretic. He was not that classic, like, someone sitting on my chest. And no, he is just saying he's in pain. So we got 12 lead. It is the biggest STEMI I've ever seen. It was full backside involvement. Um, Almost like every single lead had something wrong with it. And this guy's fairly young. I want to say this dude was like 30-ish. Um, we start transport to the hospital, and something just in my mind was like, you need your partner back here. And I'm so unbelievably thankful I did that because we started transport, we got on the highway, and when you hit the bumps on this certain highway, it does like kind of bump an artifact. And I was like, okay. So he had like little runs of that. And I was like, oh, it's artifact. It's fine. No, no, it went into full-blown torsades.
Oh no.
He starts seizing. And I had never seen or known at that. It was a great learning thing. Did not know that arrhythmias like that can cause seizures.
Hmm.
Later would learn that that's called the death shimmies. And
Hmm.
I think that's the best name for anything medical in the entire world.
The
Uh,
death shimmies.
Yes, death shimmy. So I'm drawing up magnesium. My partner is trying to like turn him. Ends up going into a VFib. So we start CPR. We shocked him. Uh, in the like 2 minutes it took me to actually like draw and push the mag, immediately he came out of it. He was talking when we got to the ER.
Hmm.
It was like a 10-minute transport. We saw him go from awake, seizing, basically dead. And then he yelled at me when I took off the AED patches in the ER. And I was like, it was insane. It was still to this day the coolest call that I've ever had. And it
Yeah,
made me so, it's that instant gratification. Like, when people say sometimes overdoses and blood sugars are their favorite calls because they actually see like their treatments work. That's the feeling I got. I trust, like I saw it, I recognized because like you don't see torsades in the field very often.
not very often.
No, and it was like a holy crap, I did this. And hearing, so the funny part is, the cardiologist was in the room. Like they had called full STEMI. I had given the report and I said, hey, this dude's in active cardiac arrest right now. I see torsades on the monitor, but before those torsades, it was a STEMI, and it's very, very large. I sent it to you. But when we get there and we're not doing CPR, they're all like, what's going on? And I was like, well, here's what I saw, and here's how I fixed it. The cardiologist was like, this is not a STEMI. This is a cocaine-induced arrhythmia. And I was like, but no, I mean, I understand like people are not always going to tell you that they're on drugs, but like this dude, he doesn't look like a drug addict. This dude looks like he walked out of a business meeting and took his son to the dentist, which is what he actually did. I don't think he's doing cocaine, sir. He said that I put on the 12 lead cables wrong. He said that that was not torsades. He said that this didn't look like a STEMI, and I still look at it and I'm like, what? Like, you're a cardiologist, sir. What? He ended up having like 100% occlusions in two of his
Ooh,
arteries.
yuck.
My battalion chief called me the next day because the charge nurse like was standing in the room when it all happened, and her jaw, I remember, was on the floor. ER physician standing there like, what the hell is this dude saying? Because this looks like a STEMI to me. And it was a nice like, hey, we heard this happen. ER actually called us and wanted to give like us a personal update. And it was a very just like proud moment. I was like, okay, I followed my gut and it actually helped. Like this dude is now walking out of the hospital. It was amazing.
That's awesome. I love those moments. I love those moments. And the the death shimmies, that cracks me up. We had
Yeah,
a
that is from the pre-hospitalist, the pre-hospitalist on Instagram.
yes. I
Has
love her
that
so
post.
much.
And it was literally like 2 weeks after she posted about them and I was like, holy crap, it was an actual thing. This is
Yeah.
insane.
We had an elderly gentleman whose wife called and said that he was not feeling well and having seizures. We get there, he's
Boom.
got no history of seizures, and the fire department's like, yeah, he keeps doing this thing every couple of minutes, but he's not postictal afterwards.
Hmm.
Kind of looks like seizures, but it's not postictal. And I see one before we've put him on the monitor, and I was like, oh shit, that's not good. Like, get him on the stretcher, get him in the ambulance, like, get him on the monitor. And yeah, he was having runs of VTAC, and they just weren't.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, he's just having little seizures. Oh, okay, cool
Well,
story, bro.
no, not really. His
Yeah,
heart is having seizures, actually.
yeah, it's a
Yeah.
little different.
It was just
Yeah.
one of those, like, it actually felt like you had saved a life. And I don't think we get to say that often at all. And the fact that it was the you were alive, you were dead, and then you were yelling at me because I was ripping AED patches off your chest after I just saw you go into cardiac arrest. Like it was that just moment of I am so proud of myself. Like it's like all of my training has led up to this moment type of thing.
Yes. How shitty is it that we have to rip off AED patches? Why hasn't anybody
I
made a
don't under
connector piece yet?
I don't understand why LifePack and Zoll have not talked to each other and they're like, hey, this is the connector we use. This is the connector we use. Let's make one together. Because that's why it was. Like the ER uses a LifePack, we use a
Yep.
Zoll to rip them off.
Yep, we need that connector piece, not just between LifePack and Zoll, but also the Phillips. Like, just make it already.
I've yet to see a Phillips. I'm so excited to see. Or the Tempest.
That's
I've
so
never seen a
funny.
Tempest either.
I've not seen a Tempest. I don't know anything about that one, but the we're familiar with the Phillips down here, so that's funny. That's
Yeah.
awesome. What is your, I know you've said that that's one of your favorite stories, but like what is one of your favorite craziest stories to share?
Ooh.
If you walk up to people and you're like, you're not going to believe this happened, like that kind of story.
It is not my story, but it is one that my classmate actually texted me. So, if you know the town that I work in, you will understand this completely, because it's just a wild town. Um, he texted me at 7 in the morning. We were just doing shift change. He worked at the service down the road from me. He did not work at my service. We were both baby paramedics, like probably 2 or 3 months into our jobs, and he texted me a picture. No explanation, no nothing. And it is a picture with a guy in a samurai sword. Not like, not big knife, not butcher knife, not anything. Samurai sword through his chest, and it's sticking out the back. They had the patient sideways on the cot, and I was like, what on earth? Got what? And he's like, they were fighting. And I'm like, Dalton, it is 7 in the morning. Why were they fighting with samurai swords at 7 in the morning? And I still have the picture. It was crazy. He's like, well, I was the second unit. I really just wanted to go to see if it was true. And then it was. So,
We actually have a high incidence of people getting killed with machetes here.
see, machete would have made more sense. This was a samurai sword. Like I could see the handle on it and everything. It was like traditionally wrapped and everything. I'm like, why do we have samurai swords actually? But why are they out more importantly at 7 a.m.? What is
Yeah,
so important that you have to fight someone with a samurai sword at 7 a.m.?
that's nuts. People are so
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, Ashlyn, I want to give you the opportunity to either shout anybody out or talk about anything that you feel that we haven't talked about for the next few minutes. The floor is yours.
Oh gosh. Shout out, first of all, I want to shout out three people specifically. Lindsay. I'm going to send her this podcast and she better listen to it. But she's very much like me. My attention spans are kind of like this sometimes, and I have to take a break from podcasts because I don't have 30 minutes to dedicate sometimes. But Lindsay, she was my very first mentor ever in EMS. She is the one who took like me under her wing and actually trained me properly on the truck, and she's still to this day one of my absolute best friends. Um, Corey, he was my preceptor in paramedic school, and I still to this day, he is the reason I am the paramedic I am. He was the one who taught me to like be the duck of like, hey, you're calm above water, but you're paddling under the water. And I had to text him at the end of the summer. I had my very first capstone student, and I was like, I could feel like you coming out of me whenever we had a stress call and I was sitting there and I was making my student talk to me or I was asking him questions on the fly. Like I could feel you coming out of me. And it was a very just full circle moment. Last one is definitely Erin. Erin is the director of Missouri Southern. Erin is that woman that just she has so many plates. She's like the circus whenever like they have the plate spinners.
Mhm.
That's who she reminds me of. But she handles it so well. She is an amazing and resilient woman. And ever since the first day of paramedic school, when she was my instructor, I said, I want to be you. And I still to this day say that she has been my rock this year. We've had a very, very tough year with students and programs and changes and all of these ambulance things, but she has been an absolute rock star and she has literally held me above water. So those people are huge, huge inspirations in my life. But I think the one thing that I would keep saying to people, or just something that has came across recently, I had a comment a couple days ago that said, "How do you keep so calm? Like I'm having trouble being that calm within the storm." And I did not really have it click with me until I had a student this summer. I feel like it's something you cannot teach in school, how to stay calm, because we have human reactions, we have human emotions. It's not easy for us to just shut that all down when somebody has a foot that is put on backwards or they have blood all over your ambulance. Like it's very hard to just be like, oh my gosh, there's blood everywhere. Like you can't do that. Or when that person's awake and you have to explain to them what you're doing, it's very, very hard. But when I had a student this summer, I had to kind of be that calm for him. So he would know, hey, it's okay. In truly being that duck where you are calm, you are fine, but underwater, nobody can see your feet paddling like crazy. It's hard. But Jen Hamilton actually is the one that says this. And it's like, I know you're scared, but I'm not, and you can trust me. That is what I would keep telling people. 100%. Taking that fear away from patients is not easy, but letting them know that you are not scared and that you know what you're doing builds that bond with them. And it also gives you a little bit of a confidence boost like, hey, I know what I'm doing. I can do this. It's great.
Very well said. Very well said. I agree. That is something that does take some time to learn, but
Yeah.
once it is mastered, you truly have control of the situation in any situation, even if you have no idea what's going on.
Oh, yeah. Even if you have no idea what's going on, that doesn't mean your patient has to know that.
Exactly. As long as you're doing something right.
Yeah. Like your patient doesn't know you're looking at their 12 lead and not knowing what the heck is going on with their heart. It just looks ugly. They don't have to know that.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Just don't make a face, right?
Yeah, it's fine. Poker faces are very hard to learn, but once you master them, it's great.
They are. I agree. So where can we find you, Ashlyn?
You can find me primarily on TikTok. My handle, I always have to look it up. EMS 2020 always asks me every single episode I do with them. And I'm like, dude, I don't know what my handle is. Odell Ashlyn. So it's just my last name and my first name. My Instagram is the opposite, though. I know it is Ashlyn Odell. And then my podcast is called Medicated and Motivated, and it is exclusively on Spotify, but you can also find me on YouTube.
Awesome, awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us on the 911 Nonsense podcast today. It's been amazing. I appreciate that you've shared the stories that you've shared with me today, and I hope that when you leave, you feel a little bit better today.
I had a blast. This was so much fun, and I'm so thankful that you reached out to me. And thank you, Chris and Spencer. Without Chris and Spencer, this would not have happened.
I agree. EMS 2020 can say that they had a full hand in this.
Yes, they 100% can, and they will probably use that and run with it. So
They
it's okay.
probably will. Ashlyn, I hope you have a great day today.
Yeah, you as well.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for tuning in. If you're enjoying the show and want to show your support, be sure to check out the Noon merch store on Bonfire. Find the link in the description below. Also, if you have any guest suggestions or if you're interested in being a guest on Noon yourself, visit the website at www.samspursuit.com to get in touch.